What's up, everybody? It's your boy Duel back here with another video, and today we'll be reviewing episode 9 of the Spectacular Spider-Man. This episode is called The Uncertainty Principle, and it was written by Kevin Hopps and directed by Dave Bullock. I'm going to apologize in advance because my allergies are acting up, so if I sound kind of nasally, that's the reason why. Anyway, we've seen Kevin Hopps has written an episode before in the past, and so is Dave Bullock directing an episode. So this episode is also super heavy, and a lot happens in this episode. So we are just going to jump right in as per usual. Spider-Man is swinging around, and it's Halloween, and he's looking for the Green Goblin, and he tries to do like some Green Goblin rhyme with like Manhattan and Gobland, and it doesn't work. John Jameson's getting interviewed in space, where he's up in space and they're on a shuttle. And while he's being interviewed, he gets distracted and a meteor literally hits in front of the ship. This part is just a forced plot point because literally, like the interviewer would have seen the meteor before it hits Jameson, but I digress. So once the shuttle gets hit, NASA is like on the news, and we transition over to the Bugle where John Jameson is watching, Jonah is watching, and Foswell's already in California. He's waiting for the shuttle to land, and he tells Jameson that he'll report on anything if he sees anything. Betty says they'll leave JJ alone, and they'll be around if he needs anything. Jameson actually has a really concerned look on his face, obviously, within reason his son is trapped in space. But this is the first time we get to see like real emotion out of Jameson other than just straight rage at people. So it's kind of nice to see that. And, like, he genuinely cares about his son, and he's not just some evil, crazy maniac guy, right? So that's pretty cool. Goblin's out striking some random blue car, and it turns out that this blue car is the Hammerhead's car, and he knocks over the car, and some blonde agent, I guess, like his chauffeur, I guess, comes out and tries to shoot Goblin, but she misses, and then Goblin tries to take her out. And while he's using his glider to fly at her, Hammerhead knocks the car door open and it trips Goblin off his glider. And Goblin doesn't seem to be fazed by this. He just starts laughing and he gets back onto his glider, and Hammerhead and Goblin start to fight, in which Goblin uses some gas to knock Hammerhead out, and he passes out. We then transition to a scene where Goblin's taken Hammerhead to some factory or some industrial factory or something, and he asks Hammerhead to join forces with him. And of course, Hammerhead says that he refuses and that he's not afraid of a guy in a costume. Hammer says he only respects one man big enough to fear, and that's the big man. Goblin tells Hammerhead he must have life insurance then, if that's the case. There's kids at the school of Midtown High. They're watching the news of John Jameson. Gwen stops Harry in the hall as they're watching and asks Harry what the green vial is. Harry says it's just some new soda that he's trying out, and she's like, oh, well, if that's the case, then let me try some. And he's like, no, and he pretty much just takes off. Harry says that pretty much everything in his life has changed since he started taking whatever that is, and when he's talking to Gwen and explaining what the formula, why he's drinking the formula or whatever, it's like a picture of the Goblin's eye up to his eye. It's pretty cool. It's a nice little animated bit. Harry says the blackouts were just a small price to pay to, considering all the things that's been happening for him, so spare him the concern. Harry, while he's walking out, he's like leaving Gwen. Peter's walking in, and he just runs straight into Peter and knocks him on the shoulder, and just a jerky way, does not care about anybody. Tombstone comes to his office, and he's looking for Hammerhead, but the Goblin's there instead by his surprise. Goblin says that Hammerhead had a thumb drive with enough information to put Tombstone behind bars, and tells him he's got it now, but it's not on him, but he'll have it on him tonight. So Tombstone asks him where he can get it and when. And he tells him where to meet him up at later in the evening, or he'll know actually. He's like, oh, you'll know when it's time. Tombstone obviously realizes the trap, but Goblin says he has no other choice but to come alone. So that's pretty much where we end up there. Spider-Man's swinging around, and he's talking about how Gwen gave him one look earlier when he was talking to Gwen with Harry. Gwen gives him like this look, like you need to go talk to him. So he's swinging around the city, talking about how he's got to go talk to Harry with one look, like how Gwen does it, he doesn't know. But while he's doing this, he runs into the Goblin. Spidey says, "Look who I found," and Goblin's like, "Was it you that found me, or is it I that found you?" Like, they were both looking for each other. Obviously, it was a trap to get Spider-Man and Tombstone both eliminated out of the picture, so he doesn't have any more problems. Goblin says that he's got a thumb drive that could take Toomey down, and Spider-Man says, "Well, hand it over and I'll turn you both in." And Goblin says, "Well, he doesn't have it on him right now, but he'll have it on him tonight." He's like, "Anybody else have deja vu?" Yeah, so kind of a weird line, but whatever. Not the deja vu line, the fact that he tells both of them that he'll have it on him tonight. It's not weird, I don't know. It's just a weird way that it, I guess, plays out. It's weird to me, but whatever. It's a weird way to, like, trick people into getting him. It's a trap, so, like, why would they go? But anyways, Goblin knocks Spidey down, and then we transition to nighttime, where Spider-Man then spots Goblin going to Oscorp. He spots Norman coming out of, like, a secret door that he's never seen before, and while he's climbing, he's like, "It couldn't be Norman." And then he thinks about it more and more, and he's like, "Well, since Norman loves masks, he could be staging the thefts to throw off suspicion." So then he now comes to the conclusion that Norman is the Green Goblin, which is, a good assumption here. Harry comes home and he drinks more of the Goblin juice, and he's got this evil grin on his face, and I guess Spider-Man does not see this. He must have left before this happens, because he doesn't figure it out. Pete calls Harry to come down, but Harry says he doesn't want to, and that he'll be in costume at Bleecker Street at the Carnival. We then move to the Carnival, where someone is seen wearing a black cat. Like, the scene starts and there's like a girl walking around and she's wearing a black cat costume, so that's obviously an Easter egg. Gwen runs into MJ, but she says she's looking for Peter, but MJ says she hasn't seen Peter either. The jocks are dressed up, and they're dressed up as cheerleaders, and they've got fake breasts and everything. It's pretty awesome. Rand's girlfriend asks him why he hasn't commented on her costume, and Rand says it's because he's worried about John and that he's like an older brother to him. And I cannot remember this girl's name for the life of me. But anyways, we move on to the Bugle, where everyone is watching for John to return. NASA says that as they enter Earth's atmosphere, they'll lose contact with the shuttle. We wait, and it's like a dramatic moment where John starts to head into the atmosphere, and as it turns out, John ends up landing very safely. Everyone's cheering, everybody's happy, everyone is just, ecstatic that John has survived. JJJ looks at his photo of his son, and as soon as he realizes that his son is safe, he goes back to his angry self. He walks out. It's like, stop standing around. What do I pay you for? You're all going to be fired, that sort of thing. Peter then walks up and, starts talking to Jameson and tries to sell him photos of Spider-Man. And Jameson says, "What are you doing here with these photos? Nobody cares about Spider-Man. They want to see a real hero, my son." And pretty much just throws the photos up and in Peter's face. And that's the scene. I guess Peter can't be too mad about that since his son was, like, potentially almost going to die. So it is what it is. We move to Oscorp, where Norman is, he's there at Oscorp, and then while he's coming back to Oscorp, I guess he comes back to Oscorp for some late project he was working on, but while he's doing that, Goblin shows up and he invades Oscorp, and, one of Norman's employees comes up and is like, Sir, he took the inhibitor prototype, which, I'm trying to remember, I don't think is used in this episode. I could be wrong, but, I don't think it's ever this inhibitor prototype was never referenced again. And it could be the weapon that he was using when he was leaving. But anyways, Gwen calls Peter as he's asking Peter, and Peter is running around as Spider-Man. He's asking about Harry, and but as they're talking, he lands at the Carnival, and it like transitions where he's still in his Spider-Man suit, but he lands and he's right next to Gwen, and he takes off his mask, and it's like, "Hey, look, I'm Spider-Man," pretending to be in a costume because nobody would believe that he's Spider-Man, right? So anyway, we're at the Carnival, and Flash makes fun of Peter wearing a Spidey costume, while MJ and Liz say Peter fills out the costume very nicely. And damn, Liz even says that you can web me up anytime, PD. Like, damn, I'm feeling the vapors. Gwen looks very jealous in this scene, and as this is happening, Goblin's fireworks go off. Peter looks up and he realizes that it's the Goblin, and he's gotta leave. Spider-Man meets up with Tombstone, where they both realize it's a trap. And he's like, "Oh, so you got invited to this too, huh? Yeah, well, I race you in." Tombstone talks to Hammerhead and says he didn't have to keep a drive, he didn't need to do that. And Hammerhead says there was never a drive, he just said that so that, he would have a reason for them to show up. The Goblin shows up and he's got a giant bucket of lava that he sends towards Tombstone and Spider-Man. And Spider-Man reacts just in time, saving Tombstone. And then Goblin starts chasing both Spider-Man and Tombstone. Goblin knocks Spidey down, but he's about to, as he knocks Spider-Man down, he pulls out the blade in his glider and he's flying down. He's about to get Spider-Man, but Tombstone throws a pipe. Spidey looks over confused, like, thank you? Tombstone tells Spidey to take down the Goblin or unmask him. As that's happening, Tombstone dips out of there. He rushes to save Hammerhead, while Goblin tries to stop him, but Spider-Man interferes and he prevents Goblin from ruining Tombstone's plan. Tombstone ends up saving Hammerhead and they end up escaping. They leave at a helicopter. Goblin then opens up a hatch from the ceiling where he's like, well, I brought party favors. And he just opens up this hatch and it's just giant pumpkin bombs and they're just falling onto Peter. So Peter's trying to get out of there. We move back to the carnival for just a minute where Flash is seen hitting on MJ, but MJ pretty much says, no, I'm not interested and I'm single and I want to keep it that way. We now move back to Spider-Man versus the Goblin, and Spider-Man tells Gobby he knows that he's Norman, even though the audience, we know that he's not. He's like, oh, you know who I am? Goblin shoots some green goo at Spider-Man. He's like, well, what do you think of my spider webs? But he ends up getting Spidey with it, and it encapsulates Spider-Man with it, and he can't move. So then he's got him attached to the glider, and they're flying around. Goblin chucks Spidey into the air and drops him. And he's like, and I'm guessing Goblin expect to kill him, but Spider-Man then wraps himself in his own webbing for his own protection, and he ends up falling into this giant ball of webbing. He falls and he lands, but he survives and he gets out of the green goop. Goblin throws another Goblin bomb at Spider-Man, but Spider-Man deflects it with his web and it goes back in Goblin's face, and it blows up in his face and it knocks him down, and then he ends up hurting his leg in the process. Goblin tries to get away. He grabs onto his glider and flies away. He's limping away. He can barely get away. He finally gets onto his glider, and he flies back to Oscorp. But Spider-Man tells him, go ahead and fly home. I know where you live. So they arrive there, and he follows Goblin back to Oscorp, where it's revealed to Spidey that Harry is the Green Goblin and not Norman. He looks very confused as Norman's walking in to discover what's going on, with Harry unmasked as the Green Goblin. Spidey asks what the heck that formula was while he's in disbelief that his best friend is the Green Goblin. And Norman calls it's Gobulin Green. It's an early stage experimental formula, highly unstable and addictive. And he starts reaming Harry. Harry gets angry, grabs him by the arm and twists his wrist or something. And then he chucks Norman and he falls against the wall. Spider-Man catches him as he's about to hit the ground. Spidey asks Harry, he's like, well, this doesn't make any sense. Why would Harry attack everybody? Why would he attack Big Man or go after Oscorp? Norman says that he works with the Big Man and that when he tried to extricate himself, he was threatened by his stooge, and that's obviously Hammerhead. Harry must have overheard, created someone subconsciously in his head that could take the Hammerhead down, so I guess subconsciously he thinks that he created this creature in his mind that could be strong enough to take down Hammerhead and the Big Man. I'm not really sure, but whatever, that's the excuse Norman comes up with. Norman says that as to why Harry attacked him, he doesn't really know, but Harry interrupts saying that he's got some anger issues, and he just acts all crazily. Norman says he'll take the blame, since he created the formula, he'll go down for this, but he asks Spider-Man, please don't turn in my son. He's my only child. I'll get him the help that he needs. Spider-Man is hesitant, but then he thinks about it. He's like, he's also my best friend. So both Norman and Spider-Man agree that the Goblin is gone forever and it stays unsolved. Peter thinks that he's better off under Norman's care than he is locked up in prison or probably a loony bin. We then transition to the Bugle where Robertson is approaching JJ and he shows him pictures of Spider-Man. Jonah asks him why he's being shown this, and he's like, the reason I'm showing you this is because people care more about Spider-Man than they do his son. Jonah realizes this and he's like, fine, we'll have a new headline. Spider-Man, Threat or Menace? Peter meets with MJ in the park, and Peter is very pissed in this particular moment. MJ says she joined Midtown in theater, but Pete disappeared before she could tell him, and that was when he disappeared from the carnival earlier. Gwen arrives also, saying that Harry is taking a leave of absence to get the help he needs. She whispers that to Peter, so I guess only her and Peter know that. And MJ obviously doesn't even, I don't think, knows who Harry is, really, other than from the prom. We cut to a scene with John Jameson where he's being interviewed and he's being asked if he's glad to be home. So you would think that, I want to pause for a minute. You would think that after doing an interview in space that he would just be done with interviewers for the moment. But nope, he's doing another interview. So he's getting interviewed and we see him and they're walking back to his ship and he's like, "Oh, are you glad to be back on the ground?" Or something along those lines. He's like, "Yeah, I'm glad to be back." And he like pats the ship and there's like a big old pile of black goo on it. And you know what it is and what's coming up next. And it pretty much just transitions and takes over the screen. And that's the end of the episode. So, what are my thoughts on this episode? First of all, I am going to give this one a 5 out of 5. This was a very, very good episode. I kind of felt like after 9 episodes, kind of long overdue, but that's okay. We finally got it. We got the goblins revealed. Spider-Man knows who he is, and he knows that it's Harry. Thank God. And I think that I'm glad this episode didn't focus on Peter trying to date anybody. He wasn't trying to date Liz. He wasn't trying to date MJ. He wasn't trying to date Gwen. Obviously, he hasn't gotten to that point yet, but it's coming. My point is he's not trying to date Betty either. He's not trying to date anybody. So that was kind of nice to see. It was nice to see that this was a way more dramatic episode. And you can kind of see that because you get some emotion out of Norman and you get some emotion out of Jonah, which usually they're just angry and Norman's just making business decisions and Jonah is just streaming about getting pictures of Spider-Man. And so it was nice to see like these two characters like coming out of their shell a little bit. Like Norman finally realizes like, oh man, I drove my son to this. You know, he became the Green Goblin because of me. That sort of thing. I don't think Norman truly realizes the weight of it. I forgot to mention earlier that when Norman is talking to Harry, he's explaining why he became the Green Goblin. He's like, it's because I'm doing what you told me to do, to man up and be a man. Norman doesn't really seem too fazed by that line, telling his son that he should have been a man. I guess you can say that he is, but it almost seems kind of fake to me when he's talking to Spider-Man. Like, hey, just don't lock up my son. I don't want the press. I don't want my son, locked away for this. So I guess we'll see how much Norman actually cares, or if he just goes back to his same self while treating Harry. I don't really know. I guess we'll have to find out. But yeah, it was nice to see Jonah having some emotion, showing that he actually cares for his son, which I never doubted before. But it was just nice to actually see that here. So, but yeah, overall, very solid episode, 5 out of 5. Next week we'll be doing episode 10, so that'll be fun. But yeah, that's pretty much all my comments on it. I'm glad that we didn't really get too much of like I said earlier, the love triangle or whatever the love square. I don't know what you want to call that. There's a lot of love going on in these past few episodes, and that didn't exist here. So that's nice to see. And it's cool that we've kind of gotten some sprinklings to see how much Flash likes Spider-Man, which is a known thing, but it's cool because when he's earlier in the episode where they're at the Carnival, Flash says something like, "Oh, there's no way there's no way he looks like Spider-Man," or something like that, and he just acts all jealous, because that's his hero. There's no way. But yeah. So anyway, that's my thoughts on the episode. Let me know in the comments what you thought about this episode, and if you want to follow along, you can watch the Spectacular Spider-Man on Disney Plus. And I just want to say, if you made it this far, thank you so much for watching. If you liked the video, please like and subscribe. It really helps out the channel a lot. I really appreciate it. And remember, with great power comes great responsibility. I'm Dual Dyer, and I'll see you guys in the next one. See ya.